Studying for MCAT cars can be one of the most frustrating things any pre-med preparing to take the MCAT can deal with. Here at MCAT Savior, we actually believe that there are four key foundations of MCAT cars that, when focused on, can drastically help improve a student's chances of increasing their score and maintaining a long-term growth curve to become better and better at cars. So here's what we think are the four most key skills that every student needs. The first is going to be very simple. It's just the ability to read and comprehend the passage. While it may initially sound really, really simple, there's a lot of nuance to this one skill. And we would argue that probably this is the foundational skill, which pretty much unlocks the capabilities of every other skill that you need in cars. I wish it was as simple as being just able to read a passage and understand it, but AAMC has a very complicated way in which they build cars passages. For example, which testable concepts are they putting into each passage? Why are they putting them in there? What speed should you be reading at? What should you focus on? There's a ton of detail that goes into that skill, and that's why the first module of the MCAT Savior Cars course is solely dedicated to high-level abilities of reading comprehension. Because remember, the skills that you use for SAT were good for that test specifically, but if you haven't done any reading comprehension since then, it's really important to take a look at your skills and kind of rework them in a way that's going to work better for the MCAT. So of course, passage reading is super important, but step 2 on that scale is going to be your question answering skill. Remember, the question types in cars are fundamentally different from anything in sections 1, 3, and 4, because as someone who gets a perfect score in Chem Phys, if you give them any random physics question from the exam, there's a chance they might actually be able to solve it, especially if it just requires a formula that they have the outside content knowledge for. They can just plug that formula in and get the correct answer. But for someone who's scoring a perfect score in cars, hand them any cars question without the passage, they probably can't get it right. They have a 25% chance at best. So why is this? That's pretty much because the knowledge needed to answer every single cars question is locked up in the passage itself. No passage means no ability to answer that question. That's why skill number 1 is important, but even if your passage knowledge is really high, you really need to have the baseline skills to answer questions well and very systematically in order to maximize that link between your content knowledge and the application of that knowledge to the questions themselves. So module 2 of the MCAT Savior course is very heavily focused on how we answer questions. And of course, a lot of what we discuss is basically the AAMC's fundamentals regarding how they build questions, which is very important for students to understand, because when they get a knowledge of how AAMC builds questions, when they're reviewing and doing questions, they also get a very good sense of how they can modify their approach to better react to the AAMC in the long run. We believe that it is kind of a difficult balance between striking a version of a test taker that has a very strict cars answering methodology and a version of a test taker that's super freeform and tackles every cars question as they come up. Thankfully, if you know AAMC's fundamentals and how they write questions, it's actually very easy to have a firm but flexible answering matrix for cars that allows you to deal with the vast majority of questions in a way that helps maximize your chance of actually getting the question correct. So you could definitely check out our sample lessons on this if you're interested, because it's a very interesting topic. Now, a third really important factor is test taking strategy. Remember, you're going to hear this time and time again from us. Time control equals test control. If you had all day to do the exam, your car score probably would be a lot higher than it is right now. AAMC uses time pressure to ruin students' scores. So while having really good knowledge of the passage and really good question answering ability is great, if you don't have any time left for that passage in question, you actually won't be able to get any of the points from it. And that's a problem. So that's why Module 3 of the MCAT Savior course focuses very heavily on test-taking strategy, and specifically test-taking strategy that is built for the cars section. So that's regarding the order of how to do questions within a passage set, the order of how to do the passages within a section set of 9 passages in the cars section. We go through all of that in super clear detail because The issue with a lot of the teaching material that's on the market is that they teach strategy, but it's basically like they're teaching strategy that they took from sections 1, 3, and 4 and are kind of maneuvering it over to cars and making it fit. But that's not going to be great because that strategy is built for those sections. To be good at cars, you really need cars specific strategy and test taking and timing tips that are going to actually help you on that section more than the others. Last but not least, there is one hidden key thing that we believe is central to making all of this work. We believe the secret sauce is having a very proper, very systematic skills and question review process, because no matter how good you are at these three elements, as you climb up the ranks and score higher and higher and higher in cars, you're going to be asked to be better and better and better at the section. And the only way you can actually achieve that is by building experience through proper review. Now, a lot of students might say that, well, we already review the questions, but here's the thing. Are you reviewing all the questions entirely? Are you only focusing on what you got wrong and what you could have done? Or are you looking at the tiny details, such as how you read the passage, how that interpretation of the passage or a single fact led to you interpreting the answers in a certain way? How was your answer methodology? How was your timing strategy? All of these things really factor in, especially for students that are trying to push to the much higher regions of CAR scores. So, taking all of these factors into consideration, a student should be aware that while CARS is difficult to study for, there are a lot of different mechanics, with these 4 being what we believe are the keys to long-term growth in CARS. And if you're interested in this material, feel free to check out our Module 0, which is completely free, which has all of the learning theory behind the MCAT Save Your CARS course, as well as tons of tips and tricks to help you build your own style of learning CARS that's going to actually help you on test day. All right, that was a complicated lesson. If you still need help, check out our full-length blog post that we linked in the video description, explore more of our YouTube channel, or just head on over to mcatsavior.com where you can get all of our strategy courses for free.